day of a looming digital currency economy, AI subjugated robotics, hydrogen colliders, and weather modification technology, one could simply imagine how nature and reality is slowly being altered, designing our perspectives of the world around us, redefining what it is that we know to be real. A simulated narrative, a designed false reality. But what if we took away all of this new technological development? Would we discover that a false sense of reality has been systematically at play for decades? Indeed. By the strategic arrangement of mass media, culture steering committees or think tanks, federal politics, and the university education system, public opinion and perspectives of entire nations have been managed to operate comfortably with a false sense of reality. A reality structured on conformity, fear-based acquiescence, austerity, consumerism, identity dependence, and ultimately, the postmodern worldview. So how is this structured narrative really accomplished? Or better, who is the administrator? Or what is the operating system that accomplishes the implementation of the postmodern, post-reality era culture? Who structures the narrative? Well, as mentioned earlier, it is a generational and pathological relationship between the mainstream media machine, the governmental and political sectors, and the academic institution system. Through the close proximity relationships of these organizations, education is standardized and epistemology is cornered to fit within a materialist and postmodern worldview. Included, culture is created via entertainment and pop culture that reflects the same ideals and perspectives, which are also mirrored in political policy and governmental administration. Dialectics are also formed to amass conflict and confusion, better known as divide and conquer tactics. The left wing versus right wing is a prime example of this. Atheism and agnosticism versus religion is another. Black versus white, domestics versus foreign, homosexual versus heterosexual. The list is vast and entangled. But they all play key roles in developing the crescendo of a collective postmodern global commons within a mono-state. Some may refer this idea to H.G. Wells' coined term, New World Order. Here, we would describe this philosophically as a battle between the postmodern worldview and the Christian worldview. Included, we would proclaim it is the spiritual battle between the Heavenly Father and the workings of darkness in high places. Politically, we can see this as a staged prize fight and title bout between the neoliberal movement of the New Age technocracy and its controlled opposition group, or decoy, the conservative right. In its sum, a very multi-layered and convoluted psychological operation prepared by the elite state of multipolar oligarchs. Enemies of humanity, but moreover, enemies of God, and ardent deniers of Jesus Christ. What I find interesting is that though so much new and improved technology and systems are sprouting all over the place, yet very dated early 20th century ideologies are being stealthily utilized to bring in this new technocracy and adhere the mass populace to its postmodernism and neoliberal monostate culture. The technology may change, but the ideology stays the same. What do I mean by stealthily utilized? Well, basically, people have no idea what they are being indoctrinated to believe, nor are they aware that this form of socio-political indoctrination is perennial and even predates the release of the color television. What we see today is no millennial thing or new cultural phenomenon. It surely is no evidence of human progression or evolution. Yeah, the addictive social media, iris scanning, handheld mobile devices, and digital payment methods may be new developments, but this humanistic neoliberalism state of being that we're all being initiated into has been done before. In fact, today we are merely receiving a second wave indoctrination of it, an upgraded re-education for the postmodern era, for the specific purpose of priming all generations for the technocratic monostate. The beginnings of this re-education presented itself in possibly 2008 with the indoctrination of a neoliberal cultural Marxist and public persuasion agent, Barack Obama. Here the tracks were laid to form the postmodern hive mind, to solidify our current Orwellian groupthink and play as a precise and ideal opponent of a brash and belligerent conservative pundit that would follow in tandem and perfect order, creating the ultimate political Hegelian dialectic and mass psychological operation. And we find Obama played the role of the New Age spokesman for the neoliberal movement. The MSM played the role of the facilitator and administrator of neoliberal culture. But where did its core value system and philosophical fundamentals originate? How did we get here? History describes the deep origins of this neoliberal postmodernism as the elements that date back to Neoplatonism, the scientific revolution, Darwinism and Malthusianism, Neopaganism, Gnosticism, and of course, the Enlightenment era, when man moved to place reason before faith and knowledge before God, which would eventually form what we know today as the New Age, and would further birth the brain children of later to arrive technocratic neoliberal movements. Some of these significant brain children were namely theories of Hegel, rationalism of Immanuel Kant, liberalism of John Locke, philosophy of Nietzsche, socialism of Karl Marx, and the aristocratic Fabianism that would follow him. There's also the sociology of Jean Rousseau, anthropological studies of Franz Boas, and the foundational sexual psychology of cocaine addict Sigmund Freud. From here, these philosophies would produce anti-Christ, New Age, and liberal movements that would shape the societal mind through use of the academic university system, federal politics, popular culture, and mainstream media and entertainment contingency. The most significant group to come out of these philosophies was the Jewish intellectual movement of the Frankfurt School, along with the imperial Fabianism of Bertrand Russell and his contemporaries, coupled with the weaponized sexual anthropology studies of Freudian Margaret Mead and Wilhelm Reich, eugenics of Margaret Sanger and the Huxleys, and Malthusian theosophy of Freemason Annie Besant, perverted hedonism of Oscar Wilde and Michel Foucault, and the liberal intellectual movement as a whole. From these minds, and amongst others, came movements like Bohemianism, the Beat Generation, the 60s counterculture, Aquarianism, and secular humanist and neoliberal roots of our new age postmodern era. Currently, we are within a vast re-education program that is, through political manipulation, humanist university education, and scripted media news, indoctrinating the populations abroad with these age-old ideals. But which specific aspect of this of old humanistic and postmodern philosophy bases being rebooted? We can refer directly to the forerunners of our current postmodern culture, the Frankfurt School, namely Theodor Adorno. But how so? Well, let us assess what we are seeing the education system, popular culture, and political institutions sell us.
I want you all to know that we are fighting the fake news. It's fake, phony, fake. A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people.
Recently, we have been given an endless battle between a neoliberal and postmodern mainstream media apparatus and a Trumpian conservative dictatorship. Now, is this just a simple false left-right paradigm ploy at producing a traumatized, collective, and brave new world that will accept the model state in open arms? Or is it more? What's fascinating is, based on their repetitive and calculated narratives, agendas, contrived political movements and points of contention, buzz terms and predictable talking points, we find that this all is much more than just another dialectic. In fact, it seems to be the rebooting of one of their pioneering socio-political doctrines that came directly out of the Frankfurt School to subvert the direction of society in the post-World War II era of the 50s. Today, we find our society dead center of the reinstating of the Frankfurt School's very own critical theory, and more importantly, the authoritarian personality theory.
Major obstacle was the family. And the nuclear family, with the father in the lead role, was extremely dangerous. Frankfurt School saw it as a repressive structure. So the nuclear family, as sort of out of restraint that's necessary for a family to function, was the place that people learned to be repressed. And they got conditioned to following orders. And this made them into what a later writer, Adorno, would spin into a book called The Authoritarian Personality.
One of the questions about the spread of the Frankfurt School of ideology in the United States, and especially in universities, is how they jumped so quickly from being a handful of people in key universities to dominating the university system. It was their presence throughout the system. While Boasian anthropology was spread by a careful process of the development of cadres and placing them in key positions over the course of a generation, the Frankfurt School very quickly came to ascendancy all across American higher education. And this has always remained kind of a mystery, but I think part of the mystery is explained by the role of the New School for Social Research and its agenda, which was to credential Jewish refugees from Europe before, during, and after World War II. These people were credentialed in a very pro forma manner. Very few of them did anything like what we would consider coursework. They were simply given advanced degrees. They turned out torrents of PhDs, and moreover, this was part of a broader stream of European Jews, many with phony credentials, coming into the United States at the very moment of the largest expansion of the American university system in its history, which was during the GI Bill after World War II. Suddenly there was a need for thousands of new professors. And these could not be conservatives because they were still politically risky after World War II. But Jews were considered to be morally pure because of their terrible suffering. and their credentials were never looked at too closely. Suddenly there were thousands, tens of thousands of new professors, and they all held this ideology, which was an ideology that was based on advancing their own interests.
It was very influential in the academic community, and it spawned a whole lot of secondary literature, you might say. Again, the authoritarian personality was funded by the American Jewish Committee, and there was a whole spate of books funded by the American Jewish Committee or the Anti-Defamation League. The whole point of these books was pretty much the same as the authoritarian personality.
Let us assess how Theodor Adorno and the Frankfurt School established the features of the authoritarian personality. Adorno characterized the authoritarian personality through four main traits: hostility to people believed to be of lower status, respect for people perceived to be of higher status, a preoccupation with power and control, and blind respect for authority. Adorno explained that the authoritarian personality was an inherent racist by nature. They had black and white thinking, one who holds strict standards and order in their beliefs. They believe in keeping rules, hierarchies, and respecting a natural order of things. There are frequent cases of hypermasculinity, which is followed by aggression, sexist and misogynistic behavior, oppressive and forthright. They come off as classist and are considered to be prejudiced against other groups. Is it not fascinating that this personality trait set is identical to the set of accusations and charges that have been made and used as agitprop and controversy bait against our current president and political red herring, Donald Trump? In fact, it is my affirmation that we are undergoing, via MSM and the academic system, a mass re-education program of the authoritarian personality theory and its neoliberal perspectives. And Donald Trump is being used as the hood ornament of the program. He is the example of the quintessential authoritarian personality, which perfectly opposes a mainstream neoliberal media machine, orchestrating an impeccable Hegelian dialectic, which we see has fully transformed an entire generation into new left communists and social justice warriors, or daft and aloof consumers that could care less about much else than their personal desires, and openly accept all the postmodern idealism that has been downloaded into them. But let's look deeper. How about we look at how the MSM and the university system has played the role of Frankfurt School critical theory and authoritarian personality theory administrator? Let us evaluate how they have built the false left-right dialectic between a liberated and tolerant left and an authoritarian, classist, sexist, and racist right. As we know from MSM and assistance of information hubs like social media, neoliberal culture has been created, established, promoted, and indoctrinated into the masses. Hashtags, memes, full-fledged movements like Black Lives Matter and Antifa have all been offspring of the MSM agitprop psyop wars and propaganda campaigns, mixed with the mirroring curriculum within the university system. Social justice warrior students are being fashioned and assembled like an action figure in a factory. Hippie counterculture former communist professors reiterate the mind control propaganda into the students while they reestablish it further via social media, and the memes carry on. The hashtags make their way, the style, the walk, the talk, the lifestyles, and illogical rhetoric floods hallways and avenues, and an entire generation is produced and new left and pseudo-right proxy war forces are complete. But how will all of this work out without an orange-faced piñata for the welcoming party to beat the brains out of? How can you establish a new and improved leftist liberation army without first giving them the perfect authoritarian personality to shoot their arrows at? The trigger agent, the racist, sexist, misogynist, classist, hating and scoffing Donald Trump. In 1950, Adorno had to distribute his work within all the mainstream universities and rely on students to actually read, to absorb its rhetoric, to forge a new left. Today, the generations have no idea what the authoritarian personality theory is. They have most likely never seen the book. They no longer have to read. They have 24-hour informational stimulation at their hips and palms. Social media and MSM simply play out the content of the book in strategic and systematic media craft theater, with varying plots, characters, and protagonists to drive home the themes and absorb the perspectives via culture polemics, visual controversy, and political contention. Back then, they sparked the pop ideology of neoliberalism and postmodern ideals with books and essays. Today, they simply do it through media technology, the mixing of entertainment and steered information, the merging of fiction and reality, 21st century social engineering at its finest. Yet they use the same old rhetoric of the past. Look at the CNN versus Trump fake news fiasco that exploded before. A dramatic and well-acted display of media craft social engineering. Yet CNN President Jeff Zucker is a great friend with Donald Trump, deep confidants and colleagues for years. The public surely ate up that production, didn't they? All the world is a stage, a performance. As then, with the bread and circuses, there truly is nothing new under the sun. And yet again, and as always, we find the roots beneath the Frankfurt School aimed at strangling the life out of the Christian worldview. Now, let us take a look. What we will find here is that each trait or feature that is attacked by the authoritarian personality theory is in fact a direct attack on the foundational values of Christianity, not simply a toxic, hypermasculine authoritarian male. For instance, they use loose and irrational threats of racism and racist allegations to promote their New Age pluralism and anti-Christian monism. The race card becomes a weapon and means for rendering anyone guilty before proven innocent. Black Lives Matter has been their battering ram for this effort. The authoritarian is said to have strict standards, is superstitious, is concerned with sexual goings-on and morality, is conventional, homophobic, and close-minded. But we understand when they speak of superstition, they mean Christianity, which threatens their liberated lifestyles like same-sex relationships and promiscuity. So in response, the MSM pushes equal rights controversies and gay trans rights propaganda, entertainment and hedonism, political correctness, narcissism, gender fluidity, and hypersensitive dispositions like the beta male construct. The theory says authoritarians submit to authority, similar to how the Christian submits to an objective authority, like a creator God and binding scripture of a holy book, one that believes in the dominion over nature, man under God worldview. So in response, the authoritarian personality theory proponents use the MSM to promote nature over man ideals, as we see with climate change. And the hyper-environmentalist movement, nature worship culture, and New Age spirituality, popular Eastern mysticism, and secular humanism, everywhere. Are we beginning to notice that the authoritarian personality they aim to attack seems to represent a skewed version of the Christian worldview? And the proponents of this theory seem to represent a reprobate postmodern fascist movement, all wrapped up in a well-designed Hegelian dialectic that displays a proxy battle of society versus Donald Trump. Yes, the same Trump and so-called Washington outsider who attended CIA Academy and Tavistock Institute Satellite, Wharton School of Business, similar to elitist agent Elon Musk and Warren Buffett. Trump's veins pump establishment, and his clothing stinks of aristocracy, tied at the hip to Wall Street elite muscle and the City of London. Mob and mafia ties out of Vegas with his Trump Towers. A veteran within a $500 billion a year gambling industry fueled by blood money, prostitution, and death. A devout Zionist and Brotherhood real estate figure that receives red carpet treatment wherever he plants his leather Ferragamos. Trump may be new to Washington, but he has been an industry playboy and establishment banking and property boss for decades. Bred in, ballin' out, lifetime actor, and hired for big stakes in one of the largest scale psychological operations ever unleashed on the American public since Tricky Dicky Nixon. Brash, bold, rich, authoritarian, and unapologetic, Donald Trump has been an ideal intelligence asset in the business of American culture creation, and MSM has had a field day at exploiting this to the advantage of its programming efforts. But the dialectics do not stop there. We also have witnessed them construct a tertiary feud between one authoritarian personality and another. You know, the whole Trump versus Kim Jong-un scenario. Yes, the same Kim Jong-un who attended an intelligence-controlled Swiss elite boarding school in Bern, Switzerland, for CIA kids under the alias Pak-un, squandering the majority of his youth away on American pop culture, basketball, and video games, as he awaits his turn to join the leading cast. Un, a lifetime actor and intelligence asset like Trump, is fulfilling his co-starring role in the Great East vs. West nuclear threat epic. Just as we saw with CIA asset bin Laden and American military-trained Hussein at war with the Bushes. We can even trace back to Fidel Castro, also a lifetime actor communist boogeyman, CIA/CFR agent and intelligent asset who was not only a red herring boogeyman for geopolitical psychological operations, but he was in fact contracted with BP and Chevron oil field management projects for years. Indeed, nothing new is under the sun, just new faces and locations. So now we have Trump versus Un, rounding out the trifecta attack on the freedom of society and the nation-state citizen. The unholy trinity dialectic of the new left MSM social machine versus the nationalist authoritarian versus the boogeyman foreign threat overseas. Plus, of course, the gripping subplots of climate change, AI, 5G, sexual assault witch hunts, weather modification, and natural disasters, all to spice things up for the 10-second American attention span. Cut and dry, carefully designed social engineering media narratives. But they started it all with the ushering in of the thesis, the liberal cultural groupthink of Obama, followed up by the antithesis, conservative, authoritarian, dictator Trump, to induce the proper reaction and synthesis. They could not have written up an easier target than Trump. He makes for the ultimate problem that will induce the reaction to lead in their solutions. They push the rhetoric of toxic hypermasculinity and sexist oppressor so they can return with the propaganda about the big bad patriarchy, genderism, pansexuality, and life-distracting identity politics, delusional rape culture, and third-wave feminism. Oppression and its victimhood mind state, all strategically aimed at the red herring cisgender white male authoritarian personality in orange face. The straw man being set aflame for change, a social transformation. The masses use social media to flaunt their edgy and daring uniqueness, only to demonstrate they look, speak, act, and think like everyone else. Hence the success of the program and the blatant evidence of MSM mind control. Have we come to the end of logic and reason? Was Spengler right after all? Have we finally reached Caesarism in the West? It seems we have become accustomed to praising ambiguity. Uncertainty has become a value, and affirmation has become arrogance. We are now afraid of what is the truth, unstable, afraid of order, and now find comfort in chaos because it reduces the rule of accountability. We are beat down, rendered unsure and vague. Within an insecure culture, there is an abundance of escapism, and we encourage the idea of a subjective reality. And if it feels good, do it. So our once intellectual centers of classical learning are today filled with safe spaces, militant atheism, Orwellianism, and anti-free speech mob mentality.
Well, precisely. The mantra of student protesters these days is, "I'm offended." And "I'm offended" is very different from saying, "I disagree." When you say to someone, "I disagree with you," you invite a conversation. Tell me, what are your reasons? And then you have an exchange of reasons, and that's called a discussion or an argument. I'm offended means stop talking. It means I don't want to discuss this. I want to feel comfortable. I want to be unoffended.
While harebrained grown adults break friendships over political opinions, selfishly forego marriage and reproduction, yet are vegan but smoke cigarettes and fight for other people's children's right to choose their gender identity. Drugged, bugged, and unloved. A brave and deathly lost new world. The only place where society has been conditioned to hear with its eyes, speak with its genitals, and think with its feelings. In less than a couple years, the popular mind and public perspective has been flipped on its head, and it has all happened faster than the majority can even recognize. So fast that some are even led to believe all of this change is perfectly normal, or part of some organic human cultural evolution. Progress, they like to call it. And this is how advanced social engineering works. Swift, stealth, and perfectly executed beyond notice. And here we are. The postmodern era is clearly at hand, and they have relied on the same ideologies to perpetuate its development. Mass psychology and continental philosophy, and of course, critical social theory. So, if you were ever wondering what all the Trump controversy was really about, well, the media has done a poor job at concealing its hidden motives. And it is now clear that today we are simply witnessing the revisiting of the Frankfurt School's very own critical theory platform. Specifically, by the utilization of Adorno's authoritarian personality propaganda in the Trumpian mainstream media, academia, pop culture, and national politics.